When did school lunch send everyone to the ER? My friend Casey brought a black small bottle of Da Bomb hot sauce to lunch. The label warning said it was 1.5 million Scoville units. Most kids had no idea what that meant, but Casey was grinning like he'd brought liquid gold to share with everyone. The first kid to try it was Rudy, who always acted tough about everything. He grabbed the bottle and poured a puddle onto his finger before anyone could warn him. The moment it hit his tongue, his eyes went wide and he started coughing. Within seconds, he was chugging chocolate milk straight from the carton, while other kids laughed at his reaction. Word spread quickly through the cafeteria that Casey had brought something insanely hot. Kids started coming over to our table wanting to prove they could handle it. Sarah from the soccer team took a drop on a chip and immediately started crying. Gavin thought he was smart and diluted some in his water, but that just spread the burn all through his mouth. The chaos escalated when 3 football players decided to show off for their girlfriends. They each took swigs directly from the bottle like it was hot sauce from Taco Bell. The biggest guy, Bronson, lasted about 5 seconds before he projectile vomited all over the table. The smell made other kids start gagging, and soon multiple people were throwing up. Teachers started noticing the commotion when kids began fleeing to the water fountains. Some were pouring milk on their faces, while others were fanning their mouths desperately. The nurse's office started filling up with students complaining about burning sensations and stomach pain. Nobody had expected hot sauce to cause this level of mayhem. I decided to try it myself with just a tiny amount on my fingertip. Even though I loved spicy food and ate jalapenos regularly, this was different. The heat built slowly, then exploded like fireworks in my mouth. My eyes watered and my nose started running. I couldn't focus on anything except finding relief from the burning sensation. More kids kept coming over despite seeing others suffering. Some took videos of their friends trying it for social media. The cafeteria looked like a disaster zone with spilled milk everywhere and kids lying on benches moaning. A few were rolling on the floor holding their stomachs while their friends tried to help. The principal finally showed up and confiscated the bottle from Casey. By then, at least 30 kids had tried it, and half of them were in genuine distress. Some parents had to come pick up their kids early because they couldn't function in class. The nurse ran out of milk and started giving kids ice cream from the cafeteria freezer. Casey got suspended for 3 days for bringing a dangerous substance to school. The kids who went to the hospital for severe reactions had to get IVs for dehydration from vomiting. Parents were calling the school threatening lawsuits. What started as a stupid dare had turned into a legitimate emergency situation requiring multiple ambulances. The aftermath was intense with new rules about bringing food items to share. They banned any hot sauce over 50,000 Scoville units and started monitoring lunch more closely. Some kids were traumatized and wouldn't eat anything spicy for months. Others became obsessed with building their heat tolerance and started a hot sauce club. I learned that Da Bomb wasn't meant for direct consumption, but for adding tiny amounts to large batches of food. The kids who took swigs had essentially poisoned themselves with concentrated capsaicin. Their bodies reacted like they'd ingested something toxic, because in those quantities it basically was lethal. A week later, I was in chemistry class when the teacher brought up our incident as a lesson about chemical concentrations. She explained how capsaicin worked on pain receptors and why milk helped neutralize it. The whole class was taking notes when the principal walked in with a serious expression and whispered something to our teacher. She went pale and dismissed class early, telling us to go straight home. As we filed out confused, I overheard her telling another teacher that 3 kids from our school were just admitted to the ICU. Their delayed reactions to the hot sauce had caused severe complications that nobody had anticipated. The last thing I heard was, "That wasn't real Da Bomb hot sauce. Someone replaced it with pure capsaicin extract. This is a deliberate attack on our school." My feet stopped working right there in the hallway. Kids pushed past me toward the exits while my brain tried to process what I'd just heard. Pure capsaicin extract meant someone had planned this whole thing. The teacher's white face kept flashing in my mind, along with Principal Reed's worried whispers. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Casey, asking where he was. 3 dots appeared immediately, then his response came through saying his parents were already in the parking lot. The school had called them and they were taking him home right away. He added that he didn't understand what was happening and sounded really scared. I wanted to tell him what I'd overheard, but decided against it since I wasn't even sure I'd heard correctly. The hallway emptied fast as kids rushed to leave early. I walked to my locker in a daze and grabbed my stuff. Outside, parents were lined up in cars looking angry and confused. Some were on phones yelling at whoever would listen. I caught the bus home and spent the whole ride scrolling through my phone. Group chats were already exploding with rumors and theories. That evening, my phone buzzed nonstop with messages about Bronson being in the ICU. 2 other kids had also been admitted after having delayed reactions at home. Their stomachs had started bleeding internally hours after trying the sauce. Parents were organizing emergency meetings at the community center. The school Facebook page filled with angry posts demanding answers. Some parents were threatening to pull their kids out permanently. Others were talking about suing the school district for millions. I kept thinking about how I'd encouraged kids to try it after my tiny taste. The memory of telling people it wasn't that bad made my stomach hurt. I scrolled through social media seeing post after post from angry parents. Some blamed Casey directly, while others blamed the school for not supervising lunch better. A few even suggested this was some kind of gang initiation or terrorist plot. Sleep wouldn't come that night no matter how hard I tried. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Bronson throwing up and kids crying in pain. The guilt sat heavy in my chest, making it hard to breathe. I kept checking my phone, hoping for updates that the ICU kids were getting better. Instead, I found more angry posts and wild theories about what really happened. Parents were sharing pictures of their kids' medical bills and demanding the school pay for everything. The next morning, I dragged myself to the school expecting it to be empty. Instead, the parking lot was packed with news vans and reporters interviewing anyone who would talk. Principal Reed's voice came over the speakers before first period, announcing mandatory assemblies for each grade. The hallways buzzed with kids spreading rumors about everything from rival schools to terrorist attacks. Some said it was a senior prank gone wrong. Others claimed someone was trying to poison the whole school. A few kids swore they saw suspicious people hanging around the cafeteria that day. During our assembly, Principal Reed stood at the podium looking tired and stressed. He explained that police were investigating the incident as a criminal matter. He warned us not to spread rumors or post speculation online. His whole speech sounded like lawyers had written every word for him. He kept saying things about cooperation and healing without actually telling us anything useful. Kids started getting restless and whispering to each other. Someone asked if we were safe at the school, but Reed just repeated that security measures were being increased. Another kid asked if Casey was expelled, but Reed wouldn't answer directly. The assembly ended with him telling us counselors were available if we needed to talk. Nobody seemed satisfied with his empty answers and vague promises. Right after the assembly ended, Detective Weaver showed up with two other officers. She was a tall woman with serious eyes who looked like she meant business. They set up in the conference room and started calling kids in one by one. Anyone who had been in the cafeteria during lunch was on their list. Kids came out looking nervous and wouldn't say what they'd been asked. Some had their parents with them looking protective and suspicious. When my turn came, Detective Weaver smiled, but her eyes stayed serious. She asked me to describe everything I remembered from lunch in as much detail as possible. I told her about Casey bringing the bottle and kids lining up to try it. She wanted to know who had access to the bottle before lunch. I explained that Casey kept it in his backpack all morning, but couldn't remember if he ever left the bag alone. She asked if anyone seemed especially interested in the bottle before lunch. I mentioned a few kids who'd been asking Casey about it, but nothing seemed suspicious at the time. She wrote everything down in a small notebook and asked more questions about the bottle itself. Did the seal look normal? Was the label straight? Had anyone else touched it before Rudy? I tried to remember, but everything from that day felt fuzzy now. She thanked me and said they might need to talk again later. That night, Casey texted our group chat that he'd been suspended for 3 days. He swore he'd just ordered regular hot sauce online like he'd done before. He shared screenshots of his order confirmation from 2 weeks ago, showing Da Bomb Beyond Insanity sauce. The price was normal, and the seller had good reviews with thousands of sales. He kept saying he didn't understand how this could have happened to him. I stared at the order confirmation, and something felt weird about the dates. The order was placed 2 weeks ago, but the delivery date showed 5 days ago. Casey had been talking about the sauce coming for 2 weeks, though. He'd been showing people the tracking info and everything. The timeline didn't add up right, and I couldn't figure out why. My phone started buzzing nonstop with notifications from Instagram and TikTok, where videos from yesterday's lunch were blowing up everywhere. Kids had posted clips of Bronson throwing up and Sarah crying and me wiping tears from my eyes after trying the sauce. The comment section made my stomach turn with people calling us morons and saying we got what we deserved for being stupid. Some comments were worse, saying they hoped we all died, or that natural selection was doing its job. I scrolled through dozens of videos, seeing myself in the background of at least 7 different posts, looking like an idiot with my mouth hanging open trying to breathe. The view counts kept climbing into the thousands, and people were sharing them to other platforms, making everything worse. My mom saw one on Facebook and came into my room asking what really happened at the school yesterday. The next morning, Detective Weaver showed up at the school again, but this time she brought 3 other officers with her. They set up in multiple rooms and started pulling kids out of class for formal interviews about the incident. She had a different energy now, with official forms and recording equipment, instead of just her notebook from yesterday. When she called me back in, she asked specific questions about the bottle's physical appearance and whether I noticed anything weird about the seal or cap. I tried to remember details, but everything from lunch was blurry, except the burning in my mouth and the chaos around me. She kept pressing about whether the label looked normal or if the cap clicked when Casey opened it. During this second interview, she leaned forward and asked if I remembered anyone else touching the bottle before everything went wrong. Something clicked in my brain, and I suddenly pictured someone standing near Casey's open backpack during morning break, but the face stayed fuzzy. I told her about seeing someone there, but couldn't remember who it was no matter how hard I tried. She wrote everything down and asked me to call if I remembered anything else about that person. That afternoon, Casey's mom called our house and I could hear her crying through the phone even from the living room. She kept saying Casey was blamed for everything when he just wanted to share something fun with his friends. My mom put her on speaker and she mentioned they were already talking to lawyers because the school was treating Casey like a criminal. She said Casey hadn't slept in 2 days and kept apologizing to everyone even though he didn't do anything wrong. After hearing his mom cry, I grabbed a notebook and started writing down every single thing I could remember from yesterday. The more I wrote, the more details came back, like how Casey had been excited about the sauce for weeks. I remembered him showing the tracking info to kids and talking about how it was the real deal from the official website. Something felt wrong about the whole situation, and I kept thinking someone must have messed with that bottle. Nobody would sell pure capsaicin extract labeled as regular hot sauce, and Casey wouldn't lie about where he got it. After school, Ms. Bowers saw me sitting alone in the hallway and asked if I wanted to learn about what really happened chemically. She took me to the chemistry lab and pulled up diagrams showing the molecular structure of capsaicin on her computer. She explained how pure capsaicin was basically a chemical weapon that could cause severe burns to tissue and organs. She showed me concentration charts proving that what we consumed was hundreds of times stronger than any commercial hot sauce. The delayed reactions made sense now because the pure extract had literally damaged kids' stomach linings and intestines. She said Bronson and the others in the ICU were lucky they threw up because it prevented even worse internal damage. That evening, I was watching the news when a health department stream popped up on the official website. Jan Kato appeared on screen in a white coat, standing in what looked like a laboratory with serious equipment behind her. She announced that preliminary testing confirmed the substance was nearly pure capsaicin extract at a concentration that should never be consumed directly. She warned that more students might experience delayed effects over the next 48 hours and listed symptoms to watch for. Parents flooded the comments asking questions while she explained how this level of capsaicin could cause lasting digestive problems. After the stream ended, I went through every social media video frame by frame looking for clues about what happened. In one shaky TikTok video, I spotted something interesting in the background, showing someone with a chunky ring near Casey's unzipped backpack. The hand was only visible for maybe 1 second, but that ring looked really familiar with its thick silver band. I screenshot the frame and zoomed in, but the quality was too bad to see clear details about the person. Later that night, Casey texted our group chat, admitting he'd been showing off the bottle to a bunch of kids before lunch. He said he was waving it around during morning break, bragging about how it was the hottest sauce anyone could buy. This meant tons of people knew about it hours before lunch, and any of them could have had time to switch it. He felt terrible for being so loud about it, but he'd just been excited to share something cool with everyone. The next day, Principal Reed announced over the speakers that effective immediately no outside food items were allowed at the school. He said random bag checks would start happening, and anyone caught with food from home would face suspension. Kids around me started complaining about losing privileges because one person decided to poison everyone with fake hot sauce. The hallways filled with angry voices saying it wasn't fair to punish everyone for what happened to 30 kids. Some students talked about organizing protests while others just threw their lunches in the trash out of frustration. I kept staring at that screenshot of the chunky ring, trying to remember where I'd seen it before. But nothing clicked until I decided to go talk to the nurse about what she saw when cleaning up the mess. She was organizing medical supplies in her office when I knocked and asked if she had a minute to talk about the hot sauce incident. She looked around nervously, then closed the door behind me and pulled out a plastic evidence bag from her locked drawer. Inside was Casey's bottle, and she pointed at the cap, saying she noticed something weird when she was cleaning up all the spilled milk and vomit. The cap smelled like super glue, and when she looked closer, the seal around the edge looked uneven, like someone had pried it open and resealed it. She said she immediately saved the bottle for the police before they arrived because something felt wrong about the whole situation. I took pictures of the bottle through the plastic bag and noticed the batch code on the label, which gave me an idea. That afternoon, I called the Da Bomb hot sauce company directly from my bedroom and read them the batch code from Casey's order screenshots. The customer service rep put me on hold for a few minutes, then came back sounding confused, saying that batch code format didn't match their system at all. She explained their codes always start with letters, but this one started with numbers, which meant it might be counterfeit or someone printed a fake label. I thanked her and asked if she could email me that information, which she said she'd send to their legal department first. The next morning, I brought all this information to Detective Weaver, who was interviewing more students in the conference room. She listened carefully and thanked me for the evidence, but then her expression got serious, as she warned me to stop investigating on my own. She said interfering with an active investigation could be dangerous and might compromise evidence they were collecting, plus whoever did this was clearly willing to hurt kids. I promised to be careful, but knew I wasn't going to stop trying to help Casey, who was getting destroyed online. The harassment against him had gotten so bad, with students calling him a terrorist and saying he tried to poison everyone on purpose. I started defending him in the comment sections, explaining what I'd learned about the tampered bottle, but then suddenly I was getting hateful messages too. People called me naive and said I was covering for my friend, who obviously wanted attention by bringing dangerous stuff to the school. Some kids even started rumors that Casey and I planned it together, which made no sense, but people believed what they wanted. Principal Reed held another assembly the next day, where he kept emphasizing no speculation and repeatedly mentioned liability concerns and legal ramifications. He spent more time talking about not posting on social media and protecting the school's reputation than actually addressing student safety, which made everyone angry. Kids were mumbling and rolling their eyes as he droned on about proper channels and following protocol, while 3 of our classmates were still in the hospital. After the assembly, I overheard some football players talking about what happened right before Bronson chugged the sauce. They said some kid in a hood practically shoved the bottle into Bronson's hands and kept daring him to drink more than anyone else had. They didn't recognize who it was because the hood was pulled low, but remembered thinking it was weird how pushy the kid was being about it. That's when a memory suddenly clicked about earlier that week, when Casey's locker was stuck and wouldn't open. A senior with a chipped thumbnail had helped him get it unstuck by jamming something into the lock mechanism, and I remembered that same senior wore a chunky class ring exactly like the one in the video. After school, Mrs. Bowers asked if I wanted to stay for extra help, but instead she demonstrated how someone could reseal a bottle cap using simple tools. She heated up a butter knife with a lighter and showed me how the plastic would melt and reform, creating a new seal that looked almost perfect. She said it would only take a few minutes and could be done anywhere, like in a bathroom stall or empty classroom, without anyone noticing. The whole demonstration made my stomach turn, thinking about someone carefully planning to hurt so many kids with poisoned hot sauce. That evening, Yeon Kato held another press conference where she announced that lab results confirmed the substance was nearly pure capsaicin extract, not regular hot sauce. She explained how this concentration could cause lasting damage to the digestive system, and that's why kids were having such severe gastrointestinal complications days later. She detailed how pure capsaicin was basically a chemical weapon that should never be consumed directly, and the kids who swallowed it were lucky they threw up. She said the concentration was so high, it could have caused permanent organ damage or even death if kids had kept more of it down. The next day, Casey's mom drove us to the hospital to visit Bronson, whose parents had finally agreed to let us come. Walking through the ICU doors and seeing him hooked up to multiple IVs with monitors beeping everywhere made everything feel more real and serious. Bronson looked terrible with dark circles under his eyes, and his skin had a gray tint as he shifted uncomfortably in the bed. Casey immediately started apologizing over and over, saying he never meant for anyone to get hurt, and he thought it was just regular hot sauce. Bronson's parents stood in the corner with their arms crossed, and after about 2 minutes of Casey crying and apologizing, they asked us to leave. His mom said they needed to focus on their son's recovery and didn't want any more drama, while Bronson just stared at the ceiling without saying anything. Walking back through the hospital hallways felt weird after seeing Bronson hooked up to all those machines. Casey kept wiping his eyes with his sleeve while his mom drove us home in silence. The radio played some pop song, but nobody was really listening. I stared out the window watching buildings pass by and thinking about how everything had gone so wrong. Casey's mom dropped me off at my house, and I could tell she wanted to say something, but just gave me a sad smile instead. Inside my house, my parents were watching the news, and there was actually a segment about our school. The reporter stood outside the main entrance talking about the investigation, while my mom shook her head. I went upstairs to my room and checked my phone, which had been blowing up with messages all afternoon. That evening, someone posted a security camera image in our class group chat, showing a figure near the sophomore lockers. The quality was terrible and grainy, but you could make out a backpack with some kind of patch on it. Kids started commenting immediately, trying to guess who it was. The patch had a specific design that looked familiar, but I couldn't place it at first. I saved the image and zoomed in as much as I could on my laptop. The patch was round with what looked like flames or maybe a skull design. Something about it was bugging me, like I'd seen it before recently. Then it hit me and my stomach dropped. Matthew Woodard wore that exact same patch on his backpack. He was this senior who ran a YouTube channel where he did pranks and stupid challenges. I remembered seeing him hanging around our lunch table a few days before the whole hot sauce thing happened. He'd been asking Casey about what kind of hot sauce it was and seemed really interested. My hands were shaking as I stared at the screen. This could be the person who switched the bottles and hurt all those kids. But what if I was wrong about the patch? The image was so blurry I couldn't be totally sure. I kept going back and forth about whether to tell Detective Weaver what I suspected. If I accused Matthew and turned out to be wrong, I could ruin his whole life. He'd probably get kicked out of school and everyone would think he was some kind of terrorist. Plus, his family had money, and they'd probably sue me for defamation or something. I decided to try a different approach first. I found Matthew's Instagram and sent him a casual message just asking if he knew anything about the hot sauce incident. I tried to sound friendly and not accusatory at all. Within 10 minutes, he messaged back calling me a clout chaser and telling me to mind my own business. His response seemed really defensive for someone who supposedly didn't know anything. Meanwhile, the parent Facebook group for our school was going crazy with posts. Parents were demanding answers and tagging Principal Reed in everything. They wanted to know how someone could bring poison to the school and hurt their kids. Principal Reed kept responding with these vague statements about unity and healing and moving forward together. Parents were getting more angry with each response because he wasn't actually answering any questions. One mom wrote a huge post about how her daughter was still having stomach problems, and the school was more worried about lawsuits than student safety. The next morning, I went to see Detective Weaver at the police station. She listened to everything I had to say about the patch and Matthew, but then explained they needed concrete evidence. She couldn't get a search warrant based on a blurry photo and my suspicion. She told me to forward any real information I found, but warned me not to confront Matthew directly. She said if he was responsible, he could be dangerous or might destroy evidence if he knew we were onto him. I left feeling frustrated because I was pretty sure Matthew did it but couldn't prove anything. Later that day, a classmate forwarded me a screenshot from Matthew's private story on Snapchat. It was posted the day before the hot sauce incident, and the caption said, "About to nuke tomorrow's lunch period," with a bunch of flame emojis. My heart started racing as I read it over and over. This had to mean something, but it still wasn't solid proof. Lots of kids said stupid stuff on social media that didn't mean anything. After school the next day, Casey and I decided to follow Matthew to see if we could learn anything. We stayed far behind him as he walked toward the parking lot. My heart was pounding and my palms were sweating. We kept ducking behind cars whenever he looked back. Just as we were getting closer, he met up with a group of older guys who looked like they were in college. Casey grabbed my arm and we both lost our nerve. These guys were huge and intimidating. We turned around and basically ran home feeling like cowards. That night, Gavin called me and sounded really upset. He said he needed to tell me something important. He admitted that he'd been bragging to Matthew about Casey's hot sauce a few days before everything happened. He was trying to seem cool and get invited to this senior party Matthew was throwing. Gavin had told Matthew all about how Casey ordered this crazy hot sauce online and was planning to bring it to lunch. He kept saying he had no idea Matthew would do something so terrible. The next day at the school, Casey found out what Gavin had told Matthew and completely lost it. They started shouting at each other in the hallway about betrayal and stupidity. Casey kept yelling that Gavin was the reason Bronson was in the hospital. Gavin was yelling back that Casey was an idiot for bringing the sauce in the first place. Kids started gathering around filming with their phones. I had to physically get between them and push them apart before teachers showed up. I kept telling them we needed to focus on getting evidence, not fighting each other. Both of them were breathing hard and looked ready to throw punches. The whole situation was falling apart, and we still didn't have enough proof to stop Matthew. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about everything, so I started searching online for anything that might help prove what happened. I typed different combinations of words into Google, trying to find local sellers of hot pepper stuff. After about an hour, I found this forum for hot sauce enthusiasts, where people were buying and selling all kinds of pepper products. One post from last week caught my eye because the seller was offering pure cap crystals and was located in our city. The username was mwoodard88, and my stomach dropped because Matthew's football jersey number was 88. I took screenshots of everything, including the seller's posts about how potent the crystals were and how they should never be consumed directly. The next morning, I went straight to the health department office where Yeon Kato was working on the investigation. She looked at my screenshots and explained that oil-based capsaicin would leave specific chemical markers that could be traced. She said if we could find any samples from the same batch, she could compare them and potentially match them to what was in the bottle. She was being really careful about staying within legal boundaries, but I could tell she wanted to help. I thanked her and went to the police station to show Detective Weaver what I'd found. She looked at everything I had, including the forum posts and the matching jersey number, but then explained the reality of the situation. She said they couldn't get a search warrant based on social media posts and circumstantial evidence because judges needed probable cause that would hold up in court. I left feeling frustrated because we had so many pieces but nothing solid enough. The school board was having an emergency meeting that night, and my parents said I could go with them. The room was packed with angry parents demanding answers about how this could happen. When they opened the floor for questions, I stood up even though my legs were shaking. I asked about the security camera footage and whether they'd preserved the chain of custody properly. Principal Reed immediately shut me down, saying it was an active investigation and they couldn't discuss any details. Parents started shouting at him for not being transparent, but he just kept repeating the same legal phrases. Later that night around 11, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. My hands started shaking as I opened a video clip that showed Matthew standing near Casey's locker the morning of the incident. The angle was weird, like someone filmed it secretly from around a corner. Then another message came through that said, "Stop digging or you'll regret it," and I felt sick to my stomach. I immediately took screenshots of everything, including the phone number, even though I knew it was probably fake. The next morning, I was walking to my locker when someone came up behind me fast. Before I could turn around, they shoved me hard into the metal lockers, and my shoulder hit the corner painfully. Someone whispered "snitch" right in my ear, then disappeared into the crowd of students. I looked around trying to see who it was, but everyone was just walking by like nothing happened. My shoulder was throbbing and I felt rattled, but also more determined than ever to expose whoever did this. I went to the bathroom to check my shoulder and saw a big bruise already forming. During lunch, I was sitting alone, feeling overwhelmed, when Ms. Bowers found me in the library. She could tell something was wrong and sat down next to me. She reminded me that documenting everything was more important than confronting anyone directly. She helped me organize all my evidence into a proper timeline with dates and sources for everything. We spent the whole lunch period putting everything in order, and she showed me how to make backup copies of all the digital evidence. That afternoon, I remembered Casey still had the shipping box from when the hot sauce arrived. I went to his house and we looked at it together. There was something weird about the label because there was a barcode sticker placed over another barcode underneath. I carefully peeled back the corner and saw the original tracking number was different. I decided to call the shipping company to ask about the package history. The customer service person looked up both tracking numbers and said the original package went to a different address before being rerouted. They couldn't tell me the exact address for privacy reasons, but confirmed it was suspicious. I also called the actual Da Bomb vendor directly and read them the batch code from Casey's order confirmation. The representative got really serious and said that batch code was definitely fake because they used a completely different format. She also said the label font was wrong for their brand and asked me to email photos of everything. She said they were sending their findings to the FDA immediately and would cooperate fully with police. I forwarded everything to Detective Weaver, who called me within an hour. She said the counterfeit proof combined with the anonymous video and vendor statement was enough to get approval for what she called a knock and talk with Matthew. She explained this meant they could go to his house and ask questions, but couldn't force him to answer or search anything without his permission. She said it was enough to question him but not arrest him yet. I felt relieved that finally something was happening, even though I knew Matthew would probably just deny everything. 2 days later, Detective Weaver texted me that they were heading to Matthew's house for the knock and talk. I couldn't focus on anything at the school knowing this was happening. Around lunch, she called to say Matthew's parents had let them look at the trash bins outside. They found latex gloves, plastic pipettes, and a tube of adhesive wrapped in a grocery bag. The detective said Matthew's dad went pale when they showed him what they found. His mom immediately called a lawyer and told the officers to leave their property. Within hours, Matthew's lawyer was all over the local news claiming this was just a high school prank that went wrong. He kept saying Casey was the one who brought the dangerous bottle to the school in the first place. The lawyer insisted Matthew had diluted the sauce to make it safer and never meant for anyone to get seriously hurt. I wanted to scream at my TV because 3 kids were still in the hospital. The next morning, Yeon from the health department called Detective Weaver with lab results. The adhesive from Matthew's trash matched the chemical signature on the bottle's cap. They also found oil residue that matched what was on the original seal. There were partial fingerprints on the pipettes, but they were too smudged to use in court. Detective Weaver said this was good evidence, but not enough for an arrest warrant yet. That afternoon, Principal Reed sent out an email extending Casey's suspension until the investigation was over. He said it was for liability management and to keep the school environment stable. Casey's mom called me crying because they were thinking about pulling him out of school completely. His dad was looking into online programs so Casey could finish the year from home. I felt sick knowing Casey was getting punished for something he didn't do. That night, I stayed up making a detailed post with all the evidence I'd collected. I included screenshots of the shipping records, the vendor confirmation about the fake batch code, and the timeline of events. I asked anyone who saw anything suspicious that morning to come forward. The post got shared hundreds of times within hours. The next morning, a cafeteria worker messaged me privately. She said she saw Matthew hanging around the sophomore lockers that morning when he had no reason to be there. She remembered because he dropped something and acted really nervous when she walked by. She was willing to tell the police what she saw. Detective Weaver used the cafeteria worker's statement, along with everything else, to finally get a search warrant. They went to Matthew's house with a whole team of officers. His parents stood in the driveway looking shocked while police carried out computers and boxes of evidence. Later that day, Detective Weaver called me with huge news. They found videos on Matthew's cloud storage with titles like Nuke Sauce Prep and Bottle Switch Test. The videos showed him ordering pure capsaicin extract online weeks before the incident. There was footage of him practicing how to open and reseal bottles without breaking the safety seal. One video even showed him wearing the same hoodie from the security camera footage. The next morning, I was in first period when the principal announced Matthew had been arrested. Kids started pulling out their phones to check social media for details. The news said he was charged with assault and food tampering. Someone posted a video of him being led out of his house in handcuffs. His parents were standing on the lawn crying while neighbors watched from their driveways. Matthew looked small and scared, nothing like the confident senior who ran that prank channel. He wasn't some evil mastermind, just a stupid kid who took things way too far. Casey was officially cleared that afternoon, but the damage was already done. Half the school still blamed him for bringing the bottle in the first place. Kids would walk past him in the halls muttering things about him being a snitch. His suspension was lifted, but he told me he was probably going to finish the year online anyway. The harassment was too much, and he just wanted to disappear. His parents were looking at private schools for next year. Meanwhile, Bronson was finally stable enough to leave the ICU after 3 weeks. The doctor said he'd need months of rehabilitation and special diets. His digestive system was severely damaged from the concentrated capsaicin. His football season was over, and the college scouts stopped calling. His parents were talking about suing everyone, including the school, Matthew's family, and even the hot sauce company. The school board held an emergency meeting to implement new safety protocols. Principal Reed read a statement that sounded like lawyers wrote every single word. They were banning all outside food, installing more security cameras, and requiring permission slips for any shared items. Random locker searches would happen weekly. The trust between students and administration was completely destroyed. Everyone felt like criminals, even though only one person had done something wrong. 2 weeks later, a court officer showed up at our house with papers for me. My mom answered the door, and her face went white when she saw the official seal on the envelope. The subpoena required me to testify as a witness in the criminal case against Matthew. My hands shook as I read through the legal language about penalties for not appearing. That night, my phone started blowing up with messages from kids at the school. Someone had posted about me being subpoenaed, and now everyone had opinions about it. Half the messages called me a hero for helping catch Matthew, while the other half called me a snitch who ruined a senior's life over a prank. My friend group started splitting down the middle with some kids defending me, and others saying I should have minded my own business. Jake stopped sitting with us at lunch and wouldn't even look at me in the hallways. Other kids I'd known since elementary school started treating me like I had some disease they might catch. Ms. Bowers noticed the tension and organized a safety awareness night at the school for anyone interested in learning about food tampering. She sent flyers home and posted announcements, but only 12 students showed up, including me and Casey. She taught us about checking seals on bottles and recognizing signs of tampering that I wished I'd known before. She explained how certain chemicals can cause permanent damage to digestive systems and showed us real medical photos that made everyone uncomfortable. The information was actually useful, but most kids didn't care enough to come learn it. 3 days later, I saw Casey and Gavin talking by the bike racks after school. They weren't yelling or fighting, but both looked serious as they went back and forth about something. Casey kept shaking his head while Gavin gestured with his hands trying to explain something. After about 10 minutes, they both nodded and went separate ways without any kind of handshake or hug. Casey told me later they'd agreed to own their mistakes and move forward, but separately since being around each other just brought back bad memories. Detective Weaver called me in to prepare for the trial and explained how the legal system really worked. She sat me down in the conference room and went through what would probably happen with Matthew's case. She said his lawyer was already working on a plea deal for lesser charges like reckless endangerment instead of assault. The reality was that most cases never went to actual trial, and Matthew would probably get probation and community service instead of jail time. She wanted me to understand that justice on TV wasn't how things worked in real life. Even with all our evidence, the prosecutor might agree to a deal just to avoid the cost and time of a full trial. Jan Cato finished her technical report and sent copies to the police and FDA with all her findings documented. The report confirmed the counterfeit packaging with wrong fonts and fake batch codes that didn't match the company's system. She'd matched the adhesive residue on the bottle to a specific brand sold at hardware stores. The concentration levels she measured were 30 times stronger than actual Da Bomb sauce would have been. At least everything was officially documented, even if Matthew got off easy in court. I decided to visit Bronson again since he was finally home from the hospital. His mom let me in, but warned me he wasn't in a good mood about visitors from the school. Bronson was sitting on the couch looking thinner than before with dark circles under his eyes. He told me straight up that he didn't forgive any of us yet for what happened. We talked for almost an hour about the damage to his body and how his whole future had changed. He couldn't eat solid food for another month and would need special diets forever. His football dreams were completely dead, and the scholarship offers had disappeared. The conversation was uncomfortable, but it felt necessary to hear how badly this had affected him. That night, I made copies of all the evidence I'd collected, including screenshots, videos, and timeline documents. I saved everything to multiple flash drives and cloud storage accounts, just in case something happened to the originals. Then I filled out an application for a summer internship at our local newspaper. I wanted to learn how to investigate things properly and tell stories that actually mattered instead of just posting on social media. The editor called me back the next day, saying she'd read about our school's incident and was interested in training someone young who understood modern technology. 2 months passed and lunch periods started feeling almost normal again, even though everything had changed. The new security cameras were mounted in every corner of the cafeteria watching us eat. Teachers patrolled between tables, checking what kids brought from home. Random bag searches happened without warning, and kids got detention for bringing anything questionable. The metal detectors at the entrance beeped constantly as students forgot about water bottles with metal lids. Everyone moved through lunch differently now, with less laughing and more careful watching. We all carried invisible scars from what happened, but slowly learned to move forward anyway. And that's the end of it. Nothing fancy, just how it went down. Thanks for hanging out and listening. It's always cool to have you here. Catch you next time if you feel like sticking around.